the technical glitch or problem we just had is proof of what our space or this space is going through. In a split of a second, we lost the connection, the internet speed was down, and electricity basically failed us too. It's some of the challenges that this industry is facing if we want to be able to compete on a local or even on an international level. This being said, the purpose of this exercise is not to sit together and brag for an hour and a half or the remaining an hour and a half about how bad and desolate the situation is. Ideally, the first third of the time, we need to be able to qualify, quantify, validate, and the issues, concerns, and challenges ahead, and of course the opportunities. The remainder of the time is to one, try to put forward solutions, and the last part is to distill our discussion and to identify initiatives that we can take forward on phase 2 of this project. So initiatives that have desired outcomes, beneficiaries, partners that can work together to achieve on these initiatives, timeline and even budgets if we can address this. And there is a lot to do, and we can think outside the box to outsmart, hopefully, the situation and the establishment, and to be able to make sure that this space has a chance to strive and continue to be, if you want, a success story, a Lebanese success story around the world. Because this industry, it is a Lebanese industry that has outgrown Lebanon geographically. It's unlike other industries. This industry has outgrown Lebanon geographically. Whoever works in that space, whether it's in Dubai or Mumbai, they still belong to a Lebanese industry. That's what I'm very proud of. So this is what I can say. So Mr. Shalin will be moderating. The floor is yours. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Yasser. Now we have a few unusual sounds surrounding us. I may please ask our technical desk to keep noise to the minimum. I understand you have a lot of challenge right now, but from our perspective, we want really everyone to enjoy the participation in this panel, and welcome to our participants who are with us virtually. As far as I know, there are several of you, but I don't have the final count in front of me. Maybe Maggie will be able to supply me a short list in a minute. Thank you so much again and welcome. And as Yasser said just before, our communications, media, and content creation realm is a very peculiar one. This realm is actually much more globalized outside of Lebanon than some of the other industries that we will be talking about in our 5 roundtables. The first 2 having been manufacturing and agro, the third one being today the content, and the 4th and 5th being the food and beverages, hospitality, and the final one, the tech, fintech, outsourcing, and knowledge industries. I noted that we are co-sponsored by, or sponsored with the support of USAID and their TIF project, and I want to read out to us the USAID Lebanon Trade and Investment Facilitation Project is designed to enhance economic opportunities by facilitating trade and investment in targeted business sectors, resulting in job creation and increased incomes for Lebanese citizens, and with a strong emphasis on exports and enhancing women's workforce participation. Now, I don't think anyone would disagree with these targets among us, but if you do, please speak now or forever be silent on that. But in this context of TIF support, first I want to say yes, it is very valuable tool that we received 4 executive briefs from 4 studies that TIF has done. But being a journalist and thus being obnoxious by definition, I must say, actually, the one of the briefs that was missing for me, the only one that was missing for me, was media, journalism, advertising, marketing, communication, and entertainment and content creation. Within the brief within their study on the knowledge economies, actually media was mentioned in smallest way, content creation, outsourcing in a small way. But to read the overview on knowledge economy, in the current context, the knowledge economy sector of quoting TIF represents the combination of information and communications technologies, business services and outsourcing, creative industries and education. I dare say, no, we are more than that. We as content creators, we as journalists, and we as marketing communication are actually an asset to an economic asset to the knowledge economy of Lebanon that is totally undervalued and underestimated, which inversely means we have a lot of potential for development. In the context of journalism, which is of course native for me, the content creation that journalism does in Lebanon leaves a lot of room for quality improvement. And it has been so for many years. But let's not forget, as we noted in our executive brief, that the most recent update, about a month ago, or less than a month old, on the Freedom, the World Freedom Index or Freedom House Index, showed Lebanon in a higher position than other countries in the Middle East. We are in a regional environment of peer countries, and compared to our regional environment, let's not compare Lebanon to Iceland or Scandinavia. Let's compare Lebanon to the Arab world, and there we are actually very powerful in terms of journalism and in terms of advertising. The first time that I learned about this personally, because coming from Germany, even after living a couple of years in Lebanon, I had no idea on the depth of marketing communication in the region that was Lebanese. And when I went to Dubai and did a story on media communication companies, advertising agencies, and PR companies that were based in Dubai, I was really literally going with Yasser of 2 days and moving from one door with a Lebanese executive behind it to the next. We were not even having half an hour for lunch break because there were so many Lebanese communications experts and leaders in the marketing industry. So without talking further, I would like to invite you to share with us your experiences in the past 2 years, especially, as far as succeeding as Lebanese journalists and marketing and content creators in the context of our not-so-good Lebanese economy, or dismal Lebanese economy. Yes, sir.
Just one clarification, just to avoid the confusion, because you quoted TIF, yes, and I don't want the audience to think this is sponsored by TIF. TIF is another USAID project. This one is in partnership with LED, which is the Lebanon Enterprise Development Project, just to have our record clear. And would like to thank, of course, USAID and LED for their partnership.
Criticizing TIFF does not mean we don't appreciate them. Of course, we appreciate them, but as journalists, we just have to start with criticism, of course. Voilà. In that context, maybe then I ask first Eli to tell us something, because you are on both tables somehow. You are in marketing communication, and you have a leg in media and a leg in content creation. So you are all-rounder. So tell us, how is the situation in these three rounds in the last 2 years?
First, a little comment about what you said or what you read from the report. You're true by saying that the creative and content industries are the mothers of technology, not the other way around. Technology is only a sub-product, and numbers and sales have proven it. I would recommend anybody to read the EY Global Media Report of 2015, so as to know what's the weight of that. Second, the weight of that on Lebanon or in Lebanon. At times in the 70s, we were even better than Nordic Europe, if you want, in terms of free speech and free journalism. And we had better quality journalists and artists and content providers. Of course, war and all that has happened has diminished, if you want, the HR capacity. However, ideas and stories are abundant. Look at the country. Only in the last 2 years, you can create maybe a library of about 10 films, all blockbusters, if you want, with the events we had. Look at the 5,000 years we have, from myth to history to events to occupation to non-occupation, all of these. We are a haven for that, and we have the DNA of marketing. You're rightfully so. However, we don't have the accommodating tools. First and foremost, not really the government, because we all know the state of the government we have. It's useless for nothing. In fact, it actually jeopardizes any progress. You want a content or ad industry or any of that, you first start by having internet, and a relatively cheap one. The Dumbos wouldn't even notice that. However, the more important item is, no, I disagreed with one of the statements that were read. Investment environment in the country and the Middle East is not at all up to standard. Has nothing to do with anything called intellectual property. They're just good at mortars and bricks. And the minute you start delving into anything intellectual, you're talking to the grandma of your grandma, basically. That is what is lacking, because we can somehow survive without the government, but also money is important to create content for a very simple reason. Not all content gets to be amateur or, about $100 a pop. Good content requires money and muscle, and that you can't find in Lebanon. That's why, among other reasons, you find all our talents are finding their places outside the country.
Okay, thank you. Who do we have from now? Our big screen is back. Thank you very much for Technic. Who do we have on the panel who wants to speak right now? Danny, are you with us?
Yes, I am indeed. Very good morning to you all. I think it's a very timely topic, and thank you all for bringing this to the spotlight. Definitely, Lebanon has a big role to play in terms of talent pool for the region and beyond. And we have recently seen a big brain drain, as a lot of the young people are leaving Lebanon for better opportunities outside. What we're trying to do, and many of our colleagues in the industry, in the Marcoms industry, we're trying to, we've seen a shift over the last 2 to 3 years. We all had companies here with 90% of the revenue coming locally and about 10% of the revenue coming regionally. The shift in the last 18 months has become 90% of the revenue is coming regionally as the local market shrank. It shrank in size and it shrank in value because of the devaluation. But this is a blessing in disguise. Now, and with the, what the pandemic has taught us, is working from home works, which means working remotely works, which means working from another country works very well, especially if you are set up to do that. So we've been, instead of letting people go in Lebanon, we've been increasing our workforce in Lebanon. And we are seeing 90% of the revenues coming into Lebanon. This is money coming into the country. It's good for the balance of payment. Our people in the country are being paid with fresh dollars, and that's also helping the economy. And these are people who now have no intention of leaving the country, which is also stopping the brain drain. And I'm pleased because we're not the only ones doing this. Many of our competitors are doing this. You're looking at a big number of people sitting in Lebanon working for the region. Direct and indirect, the number is in thousands, and it's growing every week, I would say. The biggest challenge we have is continuity, business continuity. Simple as I was on a call earlier and I had to drop off the call twice because the electricity got cut off. And by the time I got reconnected to the internet, I lost half of the conversation. I then had to, use my mobile. So, and things will get worse. So the biggest challenge, and Eli was mentioning, the expectations from the government. We have no expectations from the government. We know they're not even capable of running the country, let alone supporting the private sector. But a minimum, and maybe the private sector can play a role in ensuring that we have internet, electricity, and hopefully the ability to move around the country from security reasons. So I am optimistic, as we have great universities in the country, and we're refreshing our talent pool. As a matter of fact, and you'd be surprised to hear that, we're a regional company. We've had many people choose to come back to Lebanon and work out of Lebanon recently. Yes, if we programs like this, and if we work together on organizing and strategizing a way forward to retain the talent in the country, to help the economy, and to continue safeguarding Lebanon's pioneering role in communication and journalism, possible thanks to us becoming more competitive. Times where Egypt and Jordan were more competitive than Lebanon. Now with the devaluation that has happened, Lebanon has become more competitive, not just by talent, but also by cost. So the efficiencies are there, the economies of skill, the economies of scale are there. I think it's a good time for us to build on. And platforms like this one are very important, because we really feel sometimes we are on our own, and we have no expectations from the public sector, but at least the private sector can get together and organize things in a way that we can sustain and grow. That's my two penny worth.
Thank you so much. We totally sympathize with the fact of internet disruptions. We had you for a split second, not always continuous, but your message was loud and clear, and I think it's very well bears repeating and emphasizing, A, that people are coming back to Lebanon to work out of Lebanon, B, that Lebanon, in terms of media and content and marketing communications, is more competitive than ever in the regional context, and that the private sector, meaning ourselves, needs to develop those synergies, and I think that will be also part of all the panels, but particularly this one and the last one in the evening, where we talk about tech and enablers in the digitization sphere. Now, to continue along the line of marketing communication, with my humble apologies to fellow journalists, I ask Mark Dow to give us his experience of how it is for still a very Lebanon-based agency to work in the last 2 years, or will you tell me you went global?
Thank you. I will start basically with the overall challenges that we're facing. Then I'll focus on a hands-on experience that came later on. I think, as Eli rightly mentioned, intellectual property is at the top of the challenges, because what you're creating is being diluted and there's no ownership and the ability to build on top of it to grow. The second thing is monetization, and I think this falls back to also publishing and the media. Monetization channels, especially with the current currency difficulties and the transfers and the collection of that funds, is a big challenge for anyone creating content or even for service providers offering those services abroad or locally. Third is freedom of expression, because censorship, pre-approvals, outdated laws are always affecting. And particularly, I'm not talking only about the Lebanese market, but I'm talking about familiarity with the differences in regional markets as well, because the chances of getting blocked or not getting circulated or being censored and parts of your content being squeezed out to be acceptable on certain media channels, and especially private health companies that have obvious political inclinations or even religious restrictions. Fourth is, I think, financial vehicles. Any attempt at financing, developing funds or investments, and the ability to invest through private placements or funds or others to develop content and to evolve communication agencies and production guilds that can help is always very limited in terms of how do you calculate the returns, how do you see a path of growth, how would you invest in expanding regionally. Number 5, I think, is one of the major challenges, and that is infrastructure. And infrastructure is not only about the technological availability of the internet, it's about the maintenance of machinery, it's the ability to maintain high-performing servers, it's the ability to process information and to develop the ability to just avoid the chances of things that could happen anywhere. 6 is political stability. Literally, in Lebanon sometimes, it's a challenge to get people to work or to make sure that they are capable of maintaining a focus on a deadline for 3 to 4 days to actually deliver, especially in the communication field when you are on tight deadlines or following a news story and you cannot miss out the train. 7 is, and here I speak from my personal experience as an educator in AUB and LEU, I do teach media and communications. And I think there is an issue with a lag in the education that we're offering versus what is needed in the market, not only in the availability of labs or the technical capabilities of the students, who are by far more experimental in their online experiences, but yet fail to develop themselves from consumers of media to producers of content and media and publishing. 1 is the analytical skills, 2 is the production and technical skills. So I think a welding of the training capabilities along with an upgrade on the educational books that we receive, which are taught in the US at the same, but on the side, US universities as well as businesses have labs, have internship programs, have requirements that really uplift the capabilities of students. And the last challenge, I think, and probably this we're starting to feel now, is the lack of diversity in the workplace. And I don't mean only diversity in terms of local diversity. If we want to service a region, you need to be able to recruit talent from the region, which is a huge handicap if you're operating in Lebanon, or you plan on hubbing in Lebanon, or you plan on asking someone to come to Lebanon. Only Yasser has successfully done that so far with Thomas. So I think those are the major challenges. And for marketing agencies, for companies that want to compete, it is constantly a massive challenge to try and overcome those hurdles. I will probably talk about opportunities later. Thank you.
Thank you for alerting us to challenges. I'm sure Yasser will be able to second the challenge, actually, of bringing of foreigners and making them stay in Lebanon. Executive has had many journalistic talents, some of them excellent ones, actually, who stayed with us for a certain period of time. But my sense was always they like to have had a stint in Beirut line to their professional CV that they then can capitalize on somewhere else. And they tended to write this story again, the same story again, because every time a new journalist comes to town, they write the same perspective into another iteration of the story, which is an interesting phenomenon. But let me welcome Gabriel is with us today.
Hi.
Hi. Can we please present yourself and give us your input?
Yes, I'm Gabriel Chamon. I'm the CEO of the Talkies production company. I think Eli, Danny, and Mark covered just about everything on the topic, but I want to emphasize on one thing. Yes, the private sector is very dynamic. We all know the problems of infrastructure and political instability and all this. But when it comes to feature films and big international productions, the role of the state or the government is very important. And no country has managed to develop this without an active role from the public sector. I will state as an example Jordan with the Royal Film Commissions and their tax incentives of 25%, which are encouraging a lot of American productions to go shoot in Jordan. Morocco has a similar system with the CCM. For big feature films and big series, the government has to play a role, and we cannot rely solely on the very dynamic private sector. On another topic, when it comes to investment, which Eli mentioned, I agree with him that there is no notion yet of investing in IP. Most of the investments used to go to real estate. Now they go to tech companies, which we know that 90% or 95% of them fail because nobody's reinventing the wheel, really. I mean, there are very few very original ideas, well thought and well managed companies. Investment in IP has big potential. I think there should be an investment fund developed in Lebanon. And basically, when it comes to TV series, the development part is very important. It's the name of the game, you know, how to develop from a concept, from an idea, and having what we call a Bible that could be then taken by Netflix, Amazon, and the other big streamers. There is a need for an investment fund in content creation. That's mostly what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much. It's very interesting. I mean, having the challenges of investment and having the challenges that Mark mentioned to us before, I think it is definitely something to find answers to that we want to put ourselves into. But looking at journalism and the investment that is necessary to produce quality journalism, what can we do in, how is the situation in Lebanon now?
I think I'm Alia Ibrahim, I'm co-founder of Daraj Media. Our business model, I think, answers this question because initially, journalism, as we all know, is very expensive and it's very unlikely to make any profits. So our business model right from the beginning was based on the idea of creating content that is monetizable to fund our journalism. To an extent, we're a startup, so we're not talking about the multi-million dollars businesses. But so far, I think in the sense of pilot project, I genuinely believe that, and I'm going to go back to what you were saying, Thomas, and not just because I'm a journalist who loves to talk about the importance of freedom of speech, but even from a viability point of view for Lebanon, I think the one thing we can have an edge with when it comes to production at a high scale, if you want to compete and go to Netflix and Amazon and sell production, the only thing we can compete with is actually productions that people with deeper pockets are not interested in producing and won't produce because it touches taboos. And I'm not necessarily talking about the very obvious taboos. I'm talking about high quality documentaries. I'm talking about, and we do have, I genuinely believe, Mark mentioned how difficult it is to recruit people, but in Lebanon, now you can reach anybody around the world. We have seen that how easy it is to get to the best writers, best researchers, best directors, and they're out there. And communicating with them has become very easy. Producing from distance, from different locations has become doable. I don't want to sound like this is really the most doable and the most obvious thing to do. But I want to say that in times of crisis, there is also an amazing room for opportunity. Arabic is a language that is underserviced extremely. You're looking at one of the fastest growing languages on the internet. And just being out there and producing what nobody else wants to produce will put us on the map. Lebanon, for once, can go back to being not just a producer, but really at the heart and soul of producing, taking back the initiative, not just working for the people with the money, basically. Going directly, produce for the international market, reach out for the Arabic audience. International media companies are Arabizing their content, while every study in the world, including the EU report, show us that people like localized content. They don't want any more translated content. So I really think I see a huge opportunity. Journalistically, I think you mentioned the relationship with the state. The only relationship I see with the state right now is holding it accountable, basically creating this relationship, whereas they feel there is a kind of journalism that is doing its job, basically. And finding a way to finance, I'm all for keeping channels of communications open, obviously, but production being a means of monetization that can fund good journalism, for me, I think is something that works.
Thank you. Now, as a journalist, I may add to that actually from the perspective of executive and also from my personal perspective, when a media that I was working with was acquired by a Hackensack, New Jersey-based entity, which I will neither name off, I said, that is not really for me. I want to produce local content in English because the people who I am interested in are the people of this region and of this country. But the people in Hackensack or anywhere else, points west, do not have enough genuine, in the region produced English language content. They don't understand Arabic, and they don't, or many of them don't. and they don't have access to correspondence that are as high quality as they need to be, because most international outlets can't finance a correspondent full-time in Beirut. They all come through from Istanbul or Cairo or whatever, or cover Lebanon from Israel, which I find a little bit counterproductive in the sense of vicinity. So localized content from Lebanon, about Lebanon, in English is, I think, what we can produce and what also should be part of the equation. But definitely genuine Arab content into the region that comes from Lebanon. Yes, I believe we are still live, even though we are dark, so I will be the voice in the darkness. So localized content that comes from Lebanon, either journalistically or creatively or in marketing communication, has a role to play. Now I want to ask Ayman to pick up the baton in the dark here and tell me, what do you think, is it possible, as Aliyah said, to take that initiative to be the hub and do it in a responsible way, given the restrictions on freedom of speech that you have been battling with in Lebanon?
Thank you, Thomas. It's very important to start with this issue of freedom of speech. And of course, we read the Freedom House report. Yes, when it comes to news media and freedom of news media in particular, slightly better than the other Arab states, but I'm always fighting against that sentence because it is the very same sentence used by our authorities to justify further limitations on freedom of speech. Their only argument is, look at Egypt, look at Jordan, look at Turkey, we're still better. That's why that is never an argument we'll ever accept. This is not the benchmark we want to be compared to. So, and why is there all these problems? Unfortunately, we had to wait for a tragic event, the assassination of Luqman Slim, to understand that we live in a country governed by impunity. We know it, impunity at every single level. Not only when it comes to killing journalists or writers, but also impunity in terms of financial management, we know that as well, but impunity also at the level of physical assaults against journalists. And let's not discard this. The numbers from 2019 till today are the worst. Even during the Syrian occupation, we haven't had police forces physically assault in 1 year nearly 90 journalists. We've never had, even at the height of the 2008 problems in Lebanon, non-state actors physically assault 100+ journalists in a climate of full impunity. The state is protecting the attackers in Lebanon, never the victims. And this is not only related to news journalists, it's also related to the arts and culture field. When artists are threatened, receive death threats by non-state actors, very often the church supporters or Islamic fundamentalists, the state always sides with the oppressors, invariably. So this is the reality in which we're trying to find all these bright spots that Mark, Gabrielle, Alia, Eli are trying to identify. But this is the prevailing reality. In addition to completely antiquated a legal environment that's completely antiquated when it comes to news journalism. Defamation laws, libel and slander are written in an extremely vague way that is interpreted by the justice sector according to the political balance of power of the moment. The same judges would interpret the same sentence in a certain way under President A and totally differently under President B, not because the presidents are interfering or the prime ministers are interfering, because there is no judiciary independence. They know that according to the balance of power, their promotion to new positions depend on how well they read the political tea leaves or they identify the political winds. So this is also an environment that is the one in which our colleagues are operating. The third one is the third major characteristic are the financial challenges. They've mentioned them. But specifically when it comes to the news media industry, I'm not talking about the other aspects. I'm not talking about entertainment here. There is a fundamental issue related to the media ownership model in Lebanon and the media funding model in Lebanon, which automatically brings us to a new division that exists between the legacy media, the relatively well-established traditional media outlets that are related either to direct political ownership or a mix of political funding from local or regional friendly political sources or interested political sources or advertising. All these models are today in a deep crisis. And there is also the emergence of newcomers to the news media scene. Daraj is one of the leading ones that are the only ones thinking in terms of creative business models, creative link between quality and monetization, which is unfortunately absent from most of the traditional media. Most, not all, but most. And it's linked to the fourth and final challenge, which is related to the education sector. Mark mentioned it. But we very often train young journalists or students in journalism. We've noticing something that is really worrying, the schism between young students coming from the Lebanese University, from the Beirut Arab University on the one hand, and LIU, and those coming from AUB and LAU on the other hand. It has nothing to do with quality. It has to do with people coming from Lebanese University. I don't want to generalize, but very often we show them pictures of Bill Clinton. They don't know who that person is, and their argument is we were too young when he was president. We go to some people from AUB, they don't understand the difference between general security, internal security forces, and state security when they are writing about Lebanon. Suddenly they become the local correspondents of the largest newspapers from the United States because they know how to write really well with a tone that pleases a foreign audience, but they don't actually have such a strong connection with the ground in Lebanon. They live in that completely westernized bubble. And in order to have that good localized journalism that speak to both a local and international audience, you need a mix of both. And part also of the education challenge is that in absolutely no journalism school or faculty in Lebanon, there is enough investment in managing a media outlet, managing media organizations. You have this in the health faculties. Health management is a sector, even in education. However, it is still embryonic when it comes to educating young students to become media managers, not only writers or content producers. So unless we have a very serious reckoning with these four challenges, and there are some creative ways we're addressing it, and others are, that we probably talk about in the next round, we won't be able to truly put the country on the path for recovery in this sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I would have a lot to ask from Yasser if we are actually a legacy medium or if we are exploring revolutionary concepts of funding and liberating ourselves from all kinds of dependencies as much as possible. But before we ask that, this is then the last intervention for the first round, and then I will ask our back office or our journalistic minders, which are executives, so they are genuine, to give us the summary. And also I want to mention that at least one journalist in this room was assaulted physically during the year 2020, and so we are clear what the challenges are, but we have to live against the challenges. And my own journalistic models date back maybe 100 years, and they were actually oppressed in Germany. So talking about being beaten up badly is something that is a risk of journalism throughout the ages, at least throughout the last 300 years, and we have to tackle that continuously. But Yasser.
Are we a legacy news organization?
25 years old?
21 years old. 21 years old. Well, we have been adapting quite fast to technological progress, that's for sure. But it's our business model that had to change. So we had to reconsider totally our business model last year. and simply because advertising dried up. Newsstands don't exist with Corona, and subscribers either left Lebanon or you cannot deliver their magazine to their doorstep because they're not at their office anymore. As a business publication, most of our subscribers receive our magazine at their offices. And that's where basically we migrated. We decided to migrate to a totally new business model. That was also triggered by the reality that we were living a schizophrenic identity before Corona or before the revolution. We have always been an activist publication. Or what we wrote at the expense of sounding pretentious could be considered more think tank-ish type of special reports and coverage, especially that it's, we have opened our pages to NGOs, think tanks, and other activists to use Executive as a platform. So Corona, if you want, helped us become in good terms with our real identity and to deal with the schizophrenia and to migrate to a model that also resembles how NGOs or how think tanks work. Since what we produce is think tank type of material, we might as well have a business model that corresponds to it. And that's why, so our partnership with LED and USAID, our partnership with CAS, and other partnerships that we have with UNDP and others just was a result of this migration. Not that we didn't have these partnerships before. We had these partnerships, but now they became core to how we do business. So, so this is, if you want, what I can explain. So does this make us legacy media? We are independent in our journalism, and we have been quite, and we have been paying the price quite dearly for the last 20 years. The frequency and intensity of threats have been increasing, and we feel that oversight, whether it's a phone call from a politician just warning us about what we have written, or a total death threat at 2 a.m. Because of a cover or because of an editorial or content in our magazine. This has been common practice for the last 21 years. Of course, the arrest of Greg, and thank God he is French, so his embassy intervened to get him out of prison. Otherwise, he would have spent maybe another additional night, a couple of nights there. Is a desolate situation. But it's, again, when it's a vocation, you need to expect that and accept that, and it's part of what we do. And why not? We should continue doing it.
Thank you. Now I may ask Alexei to give us the journalist's take on the first round of our deliberations.
So, hello everyone, first of all, and I want to salute all of you who are basically our media colleagues for being here, still fighting the good fight. Also, as we can all agree, you've been pioneers in media, you've set standards for the industry, and more importantly, you've done it by yourselves. As we all know, and all the challenges we iterated today are challenges related to lack of funding, to lack of investment, insufficient government support. So basically, you are the self-made leaders of this industry and definers of this industry. Now, based on the current challenges, we all know, and I will not repeat. It seems we all know also the way forward, what it will entail. It will entail, first of all, developing your own business models to continue to be adaptive and innovative and survive crisis. It will require developing skills of future professionals in the industry, so you can ensure continuity and have to rely on local talents. It will require also improving the legal environment to enact intellectual property laws, protect freedom of expression, and other laws necessary for the growth of the sector. It will require also creating investment channels or banking facilities to continue supporting you financially. And this is where I think you have a bigger role to play, because you have been industry leaders. Now, in a sense, you owe it to, and you've earned this reputation by yourself. Now you owe it to yourselves to take a more active role in engaging the other stakeholders, engaging people in education, engaging people in legislation, in investment. Some of you, like Mark, are teaching communication. This is one way of doing it. It needs to be more proactive. It needs to really open a dialogue with educational institutions and create programs for them, create curriculums. It needs to open a dialogue with legislators and be part of, involve yourself, insist on involving yourself, on creating, on drafting, on passing the laws. It's time to pass the torch of pioneering journalism and pioneering media content creation to another generation, while you take another role, which is not very different from your role, but it's more advanced. You are now becoming guides, not leaders only. This is, I think, what we'll be focusing on the engagement of stakeholders and the action plan in the next part of this session. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Alexei, our new managing editor. And I can say that the brain drain of Lebanese talent in journalism has certainly not bypassed executive over the past 18 months. I had a turnover of 3 managing editors. One went to Scotland, one went, anyway. I had a turnover of journalists. I had a turnover of people. Now, every one of the quotes that I heard first when coming to Lebanon was someone telling me, every Lebanese at one point in their lives is a journalist or a restaurant owner or both. So we will talk about journalism and restaurant ownership today. But in this same time, I heard another quote that someone in the political diplomatic field told me, in Lebanon, you find all the virtue and all the vice. And virtue and vice I found indeed over the last 20 years in Lebanon. And in this context, Ayman, I want to clarify, when I talk about the Freedom House Index, I'm not talking about being Lebanon good enough in terms of media freedom or media quality, journalistic quality, but rather as a business journalist, and sometimes a humble business analyst, saying Lebanon has a comparative edge. And this comparative edge, how we can leverage that edge into more business opportunities. As I get directly into the second round, because we had these technical disruptions, I want to ask from Gabriel, how do you see that our edge of creativity can be leveraged into monetization and into new ways of employing Lebanese talent? Are we still online? Looks like no one can talk to us right now. Then let's jump the question to Eli.
I will start with a comment on some things that I heard. We need to remember that while 7% of people who consume internet or are on the internet are Arabs, only 1% of content on the internet, less than 1%, is in Arabic. However, There is a debate whether that's because of lack or not. Because out of 10 million pages, roughly, consumed on the internet, they are consumed 54% in English. So I wouldn't, if you want, shackle myself with language. I would push for the authenticity and locality of the story, irrespective of the language. And if you want to use your investment properly, you might want to think English first. However, the story is what matters, not the language. As to how do we do that, as I told you earlier, we have a lot of stories. We have language capacity. We have diaspora like no other diaspora compared in size. I don't think there is a diaspora around the world that has double, triple, or quadruple the number of people inside the country. Maybe Irish, I'm not sure. However, these multilingual, multi-heritages, and a long heritage and story are more than enough to give us ideas and give us, if you want, tone of story. Talent, though, is becoming scarce, and it has something to do with some generational issues. Remember, we have an issue with a generation that does not look at the world the way the world looks at itself. We have issues such as foreigners can't stay in the country, and even in good days, in relatively good days, because we haven't had good days in the last 50 years, in relevant, decently good days, we were not able to hire as much as we need in foreign talents. These are gone. I've lost about 10 in the matter of year or less. And also Lebanese talents we are losing. Die hard, love the country and willing to die staying here, or doesn't have the means to move. Otherwise, the good talents, I'm afraid, are almost about to finish, at least new generation.
Well, thank you. As a foreigner in Lebanon who has been here for a while, I can here be fully transparent. My anchor in Lebanon is my Austrian wife, who is committed to helping people and just preparing a next food distribution in Lebanon, and has been working relentlessly for 20 years. And every time I say I'm frustrated with Lebanon, she says, no, I want to stay. I love it. I love the people here. And it's really, even though the weather is better than in Germany, but the good side of the people, of which there are even some diplomats, because the person I quoted about vice and virtue was a senior diplomat. Even those people, there are so many good and nice people and enjoyable people to interlocute with, that I say staying in Lebanon has had its many benefits. One of them, developing my own resilience. This morning, my power cut was suddenly at 8:20, and if I would have been in Germany, I would probably have gone crazy. I have to get ready for a session. There is a power cut. What do I do? By now, I am, okay, power cut, but let's go. Yeah? So resilience means, in this sense, pushing the envelope to understand how much we can do. And in this sense, I think the last year was the best education of resilience that you couldn't even pay for if you were going to jungle camp and invest $1 billion. But now, thank you, Gabi is back with us, Gabriel, and internet is back on. So please, your contribution on how do you think we can move on with mobilizing the monetization of Lebanese contributions? Is it possible? What do we need to do other than having an investment fund?
Okay. Well, Danny talked about the pool of talent we have here, and delocalization, meaning that Lebanon is a creative hub for the region, and the competitive advantage we have in doing stuff locally here for the whole region and even internationally. So I think this can apply as well to content creation, where we are seeing more and more talented writers, develop their skills and learning through workshops and study abroad script writing. This was lacking for a long time. I wouldn't say today that we have a huge pool of good writers, but we're getting there. It's improving in that sense. So I think our business model should be to create here, write, present, do the things that we know how to do in terms of creativity, art direction, graphic design, video content, and do this and try to export these skills and try to get back some of the brains. A lot of my colleagues mentioned brain drain. It is true. I mean, people in the production field, whenever we call someone because we need them for a local shoot, well, at least 50% are now either in Dubai or in Riyadh or in Qatar or somewhere. So we need to get these people back through offering them opportunities here. The cost of living has gone down a lot here if you have fresh money. So we can have this advantage. Now, the problem is that the Lebanese brand, and my colleague brand builders will probably agree, the Lebanese brand, which used to be a strong brand, has eroded to a certain extent due to all the political struggle and the environment.
Thank you. Now, as a foreign, sorry, are you continuing something or?
No,
okay, thank you. As a foreigner perceiving the Lebanese brands from Beirut, I can say that 20 years ago, the Lebanese brand was Battlefield Beirut, still informed by the 1970s. 10 years ago, the Lebanese brand shifted to, the country that helps the Syrian refugees beyond anybody else's capacity. When Germany was having national headlines about 300 Syrian refugees arriving with the first flight, or even less than 100 coming with the first flight, we were talking about 100,000 coming in several months' time. So actually the brand of Lebanon as of late, and I actually fault my colleagues in international media for that, has been devalued because the sensational easy story is the bad things about Lebanon. Everybody can repeat them by just looking out the window. But finding the good story and the potential story of Lebanon, which we are committed to here, is something I think that has a lot of capacity. And in that sense, I would like to ask also our panelist from USAID on the virtual screen, whoever is ready to answer the question, how do you perceive the media and content production as a potential sector for bringing Lebanon into a better performance in terms of the Lebanon Enterprise Development and in terms of the investments that are needed?
Thank you, Thomas. I may have a little bit of delay due to the internet. This is exactly why I think USAID is supporting these kind of roundtables and activities under the LED project, or also had been assessed under the TIF project, because this is something, those are sectors new to donors and to USAID in particular, but we understand the big potential, and we understand that the support of these sectors might yield into the objectives that donors are looking for, which is job creation, mainly quality job creation for Lebanese, supporting the economy, diversifying the economy, and supporting also in bringing some foreign exchange to Lebanon. So I think there is a lot of interest, but this is new. Usually donors are more on the agricultural, some manufacturing, tourism, rural tourism, environment activities, but all the all the knowledge economy, let's say, including the media and content that been discussed today, are very much interesting, and this is why we're analyzing this, and we're also USAID is putting this sector as one of the sectors to partner with, to support in terms of partnerships. And this is why I sent you, Thomas, those links to the new partnership platform that would allow entities and companies to reply to this call of partnership, particularly in this sector.
Thank you so much, George. Now, Alia, what would you say? Does that sound encouraging to you? What would you like to do tomorrow about getting more support for Daraj?
Well, if it's for production, it's one thing. If it's for the journalism, it's another thing, because we really do these things separately. For production, I want to contact, of course, I really believe in alliances. I really believe in co-productions. I really believe in doing whatever works to get the funding we need to work on our journalism. But again, we do separate the two completely. I want to comment on the 1%. Agreed, there is 1%, but the 1% is mostly horoscope and really bad quality content. So raising, and this is where I think we have the edge. I think, Kamina, I don't want what I said to be interpreted as saying that Lebanon's freedom of speech right now is amazing. We have to deal with all these hurdles every day. But what I mentioned as going back to our heritage is that Beirut used to be the city everybody used to come to think and write, and they would come for the freedom of production, basically, production of ideas, of books, of whatever. And this is where we can compete. Today, the production that makes money is drama, where we cannot compete as production because everybody is doing it. Turkey is doing it, Dubai is doing it, Saudi is doing it, everybody is doing it. What we have an edge to produce is what we've always been good at. It's really becoming this hub of the best writers, the best again, archivists and researchers and storytellers, and produce this kind of content. I genuinely believe we would first be contributing to closing this gap of Arabic. This is very sellable to international audiences because it's easily, we can do it in English even and create an English. We did that this summer. We've produced a docuseries for Vice that was available in English and in Arabic. The original filming was in Arabic, but we created VO in Arabic and in English. It's doable. Again, it's very small, but it's a pilot project that shows that you can go directly to the international companies selling content that if they want to produce, it would cost them at least a couple of zeros next to what they paid us. We're here, we have the edge, we have the knowledge, we have the stories, we can produce quickly, and we own the story. This is, I really think, focusing on what we're really good at and selling it is much better than trying to service a lot of areas that honestly anybody can easily compete and do a much better job than us right now.
Frankly, I haven't pinpointed what we're better at than others yet. I don't know what we're better at. It's definitely we're not good.
We gave up on that for a very long time. We're better at creating an ecosystem where people can.
We can't do a proper freedom of speech. We can't do governance. We can't do any of that. What are we good at? We're good at creative ideas. We have plenty of history to dig from, and I'm saying you're absolutely right. English and Arabic work.
I think you are good at storytelling, but I want to challenge Mark and Alia. Can you do a case study on Daraj and emulate it into something that we can circulate as something to be used for developing successful media concepts made in Beirut?
Yeah, I'm sure we can write a book about their success, but it's more about the people, I think. And the formula that they have brought forth has established itself. in terms of something that you just mentioned before when you asked Eli about employment, and I think that is the key about attracting the right talent and allowing them to flourish. And that requires several things. Mainly is if we can create clusters where actually production, technology, talent can actually interact. And I think we're missing on that. We're too fragmented, we're not in constant, and plus, let's not forget the role of syndicates and unions that can help protect the industry, that can help set standards, associations, professional associations. Those are not small players, and it's not all about individual abilities or one or two success stories. It's actually about setting a strategy to be competitive as an industry versus the region. I wouldn't say we're the best, but we can be competitive, and being competitive requires us to be able to create those clusters where we become a network that can create opportunities for each other when it comes to that role. Second is, I think we also have the hubbing services, besides requiring those clusters, that was the idea that was mentioned. I think also on the legal sense, it's good to start thinking about free zones. Taxation in Lebanon, the legal structures that we have, the censorship that we have, free zones for creative industries is probably a game changer. It would create opportunities for those businesses. They would be more export focused than internal consumption focused. They would be able to develop their financial capabilities, protect from any mishaps or complexities with the Lebanese banking sector and the legalities and the declarations and all of that. And probably some of those opportunities, clusters and free zones, will create a lot of opportunities for employment. They would create the space where we are allowed to flourish. And I think that is the critical option that we should be studying. Entities or organizations and associations that can set strategies, globally and grassroots built from professionals within the industry. Two is hubbing within clusters that we can produce. And also, clusters is not only about humans, it's about infrastructure and technology. One building with fiber optic and massive servers and processors and the direct connection to the internet and backup generators and all of that really makes a big difference for us to even think properly without having to worry about minute details. Plus, those centers will create a lot of knowledge that will impact, and it will allow a lot of young people to aspire to belong to a community that is physically present or at least virtually present. And if we get the legal framework that would allow for that, that would allow and protect a greater role for expression, that would provide the technical platform to succeed, that would be protected to raise funds properly within that context with the protection from local exposure, I think we will be looking at engines of job creation as well as attractive entities to invest in.
Thank you. Two questions, one to Yasser. What about the associations? Is there hope for any of them?
No, there is no hope. And I served...
Especially his.
I served on the board of the journalists syndicate, journalism syndicate, Nab Sahafi. Yes, press order. And I think they are still bewildered, and they're still discussing what is their role. You know, it's really desolate. It's sad, and it was heartbreaking to be sitting in that room. And I attended only maybe 3 or 4 of the board meetings, and it's really sad. But this being said, I would like just to note a couple of things. Of course, Lebanon has taken a shock, and the purchasing power has dropped, but it will find its equilibrium again. This is how markets work. Demand for Lebanese talent will increase, which also will increase again its purchasing power, whether it's fresh dollars. And we, since Mr. Shallon mentioned it, the fact that we had the turnover most of the people who left executive, they left executive to get fresh dollars in other companies in Lebanon, which means that this mechanism is starting to work, and hopefully it will get to us too. Maybe we should, one of the solutions is to create platforms that will expedite this identification of talent from international organizations or international markets towards the Lebanese talent that will allow, as Danny said, since we can work from home and we can work remotely, maybe we can allow for this identification of talent to become easier, and of course for talent to showcase their work. The second thing is what Gabriel mentioned. Yes, we need the fund, and most probably the Lebanese talent is more accessible and more affordable today, which also means that, for example, I remember in the early 2000s to produce a movie, it would cost the budgets were $400,000, and then it went up to 1.2 million. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Gabriel, around the time when Ghadi was produced. And then a couple of years later, the budgets for creation of movies went up to $2.5 million, and now it's up to Lebanese studios and directors and etc. are producing at around $3.5 to $5 million. So this is a huge market, and we can tap into. It needs organization. We haven't had any legal, regulatory, or policy to encourage that space, and we should, and we should. Yet we need to come together because it's the content that Daraj is producing, or executive or Skies need to. Today it's not only written. It's also produced in movies. We have worked with Gabriel in producing or in several of our movements. And most probably we can do more if we have access to more capital to launch more movements. So there is a lot of synergies. The biggest danger that will happen, I think, and this is on a national level, is those who are able to attract foreign funds and able to sell on a global market versus the Lebanese labor force that will remain paid in Lebanese pounds and not fresh dollars, and will not be part of this new market that will emerge. This already existed before. You know, there were two Lebanons before this crisis. You had people living on minimum wage, and companies who had all their business model built on Lebanese revenues, and you had another Lebanon whose business model was built on a regional or a global expansion, and they had a totally different standard of living. So the disparity between the two Lebanons will increase, and of course, in the absence of public policy and a safety net, the misery will not ease, it will increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasser. And I think two comments on that. I mean, I could go on overboard on talking about journalism and media in my concept as being similar to open banking style of technology platforms, but I will not step into that. It's not my role. But one small comment, if I think about media-free zone and think Dubai, then I think I am so happy in Beirut, because the media-free zone in Dubai or any other zone in the Gulf area for me cannot compete with the atmosphere of communication in Lebanon. And my final question for Ayman will be actually if we think how can we create a cluster, including a physical cluster of not just only freedom of speech, but technology and library and archive and interaction and coffee shop and pretty much everything you want, from cyber to happy birthday parties, to make use of this Lebanese and expand the culture that Yasser talks about. But before you answer that, I want to ask our panelists from the virtual side who wants to communicate and contribute another statement. Danny, yes.
Look, I think I sense an overall pessimism, which unfortunately is understandable, but you'd be surprised to know that what's already happening now, there are hundreds of very talented people delivering world-class output, capabilities in community management, in branding, in analytics, in programmatic. One of our competitors is running programmatic with 350 people in Lebanon for Europe. So the talent is here, whether in motion design, whether in coding. There's so much happening that unfortunately a lot of us don't know about. And it's a problem that we don't know about it, because if we knew about it, then the universities will change and upgrade their curriculums to prepare more and more of that talent. So something that's really needed is working closely with because this is our bank, this is our wealth, is the universities and the talent pool, because the youth these days are unbelievable. So really identifying the areas of growth, identifying the areas of strength, and whether these people stay in Lebanon and do it remotely, or whether they travel around the world and send money back to Lebanon, it's all good for the economy. It's happening big, the quality is amazing, and you'd be surprised how, how talented the people that we have are. We don't have enough of them, and this is where we need to work with the universities to prepare more of those people in the areas of neuroscience, in the areas of data, in the areas of analytics, coding, all these areas, and less of, unfortunately, the jobs of the past that we're trying to hang on to, the legacy you're talking about. There's a lot of legacy we're trying to hang on to. We're a bit nostalgic about the past. The world has changed, not just Lebanon has changed. And the sooner we adapt and the sooner we change our education to mirror that and to match that, I think the people here are amazing. Whether they stay or go, it doesn't make a difference.
Thank you. I second that. I think it's a very important point, but honestly also, I didn't feel a sense of vast pessimism here from any participant. I think we have something more like what you could call a bounded optimism in the sense of economic perceptions. So from that, for the last round of statements, I invite you now to prepare your minds to say which project you think will be the most promising. But before I go on to this last round, because we are down to 10 minutes, I want to ask Ayman about the clusters.
Yeah, I actually believe that the answer that Danny gave is the closest to clusters. I actually specifically want to be now optimistic because actually the contrary of optimism is apathy, and I don't think anybody here is apathetic. So it's not pessimism or actually describing some of the realities. There are real opportunities. All the colleagues mentioned them, and specifically, I want to focus again on news media. It was decided right before the COVID pandemic. Budgets in the United States, in Europe, and some other initiatives, including also large-scale foundations, have dedicated funds right before COVID, thankfully, that today constitute a real opportunity for the media sector. And I know many people don't like grant funding, but it's no longer your 1998 grant funding for a small project to report on one thing. It's grant funding that is taking into account the new sustainability needs and the new realities, both technologically and economically, of the media sector. And today, I know there are opportunities because we are lucky at the Samir Kassir Foundation to be kind of, I wouldn't call it custodians, but kind of the recipients or the intermediary organization that is today ready to invest in quality journalism more than many other things we've seen in the past. It is happening now. And it is an opportunity for the new independent newcomers media startups, and it's also an opportunity for some of the more established organizations. When it comes to real engagement in investigative journalism, there are funds and there will be funds, and there will be an ability to think very creatively about support for investigative journalism. Even if we're not talking about all the deep investigative stories that might take months and months to be completed, there are today more funds than ever for quality, accountability-oriented journalism. And this is open for some of the relatively recent organizations and some of the most established ones. And this is a very fascinating debate we're having on a daily basis with the owners and CEOs of the very established TV stations in Lebanon, for example. Are you ready to actually introduce some real new type of content that is truly high quality journalism, even if it would put you at odds with some of your previous friends and sponsors? The fact that there is an economic crisis today creates an opportunity. Should we do it? Actually, if there is funding in fresh US dollars to produce real excellent election-oriented shows, real excellent investigative shows, should we actually do it, even if it doesn't mean pleasing the same political friends we used to have last month or last year? It's a debate that is worth having, and we're having it, and we're relatively optimistic about its results. And the same applies to media organizations that want to invest in smart use of social media, that want to invest in better understanding of data, of analytics. Today, honestly, come and talk to us. And there will be other opportunities or other consortiums of international media development organizations involved in that business in the coming months. We know what the call for proposals are. The results will be out in July and in August. They involve relatively serious European money, American money. There is also a huge investment from Luminate Foundation, the Omidyar Foundation, in something called the International Fund for Public Interest Media that is seeking numbers that have not been seen in the past. And it's not the classical, small grant from a small German foundation or a small Swedish foundation. Honestly, there is something really interesting here. We need to be prepared as an industry in Lebanon and also in the region to think creatively about it, because the real success will happen when we combine talents from across the region and think about MENA also as a big market. And if we think cooperatively, among organizations that share values, I think the combination of these two will be met with the right investment.
Thank you, and I hope that solutions journalism will also have a good spot in there, because we want to be very constructive. And one thing I can say from 20 years in experience in Lebanon, more than half of it with Executive Magazine, I have often risked my connection with Yasser by writing things that he might not automatically approve of, I thought. But this is the job of an ethical journalist, and that's what I strive to be. And I can say that Executive actually tries to be very much the ethical, solutions-based journalistic platform. In that sense, I refuse to call ourselves legacy or startup. We are in constant flux, I feel. But anyway.
Come and talk to us. We might have some really interesting opportunities.
Ruba, you heard him say something about social media. Please nail him on that, Yani. Pin him down until he gives you. I mean, you can wrestle him to the ground and sit on, make sure he responds. Mark, your final comment and also answer to the question: can our education establishments understand the need for better media studies and not journalism training that is late 19th century?
That's exactly my final comment focused on. I think our main asset is human capital, and we need to make sure that the flow of human capital into our organization stops, which requires us to engage educational institutions and make sure that we jointly, with the difficulties that they are facing as well when it comes to the type of educators available, the type of students, and the abilities of them technically to upgrade their facilities. So I think the private sector should actively engage educational institutions so we make sure we continue to get the flow of talent into our institutions to be able to flourish, because the reality is we will not be able to recruit from abroad to Lebanon. So we have to make sure we have homegrown talents that can constantly supply our organizations to be able to be competitive. That's my final word. Thank you.
I'm on a quick final word.
I think more than ever, we need to invest in solidarity within the sector. You call it clusters, you call it cooperation opportunities, because right now, the help will not come from the public sector. So we need to build or contribute to building a strong public sector, but we don't have the luxury of time for it. So this is one of the most important things. At the same time, it's just a call to also extend our thinking here also to the arts and culture field. Very often in the arts and culture field, I'm talking music, I'm talking theater, I'm talking dance, so not necessarily industries that might have a very wide audience, such as movies or series. There is also so much talent in Lebanon that deserve creative thinking similar to the one we heard today. We have been trying to push some of the cultural actors to start thinking in terms of policies for the sector instead of only asking for money for their performance. And we hope that with such a movement, with the involvement of more actors of the creative industry, we can also engage them in this conversation and have solutions that target them as well.
Thank you. I think I hear you say we want to build an ecosystem. Now, Danny, your last evaluation, were we good or were we missing everything when in our discussion? We are never sure if you are watching the static picture from the galaxy 10 million light years away, or if we are seeing you and not hearing you.
Wait, I hope you're not talking to me.
Yes, they are.
Ah, okay, sorry. Yes, you wanted what? My thoughts, my final thoughts.
Final evaluation as an executive of a major marketing communications empire.
Look, first of all, I think the bright minds on this panel and in your room have their minds in the right place. And I think it's great that we've doing it because nobody else is doing it. And it's great to have the support of the likes of USAID, because sometimes you need a bit of funding and a bit of outside support. The people are here, the talent is here. We have a great education system that needs a bit of upgrading. And we have the last 25 years, there are enough Lebanese people around the world and around the region that are willing to help. They are willing to help in sending work to Lebanon. They are willing to help in employing Lebanese outside Lebanon. It's really engaging the diaspora. It's really creating a platform where like-minded people can closely collaborate with one interest in mind, the interest of our people. Because honestly, we're the only ones thinking about our people. Our government isn't thinking about our people. They're thinking about staying in power, and it saddens me. So I am optimistic, and I did sense optimism around the room. It's just a question of organizing this optimism in a way where the different sectors work closer together in a tighter collaboration, really pushing in one direction. We owe it to the youth. We owe it to this new generation that's coming in Lebanon. They are opening their eyes to the toughest times, be it the pandemic, be it the economic crisis in Lebanon, be it the security problems. I mean, the Beirut blast really is something that breaks you. And when I go and walk around the streets of Beirut and see people rebuilding and see people optimistic, trying to start up new businesses, I think we owe it to them. It's our responsibility to give these people the chance that we had many years ago. So happy to help in any way that we can. I am optimistic because I know of a lot of things that are happening here and there. It's a question of organizing ourselves better. So thank you for this. And, I hope for better days for Lebanon and the Lebanese people.
Thank you, and thank you for your call for organizing us. I think we have to self-organize. Nobody else will do it for us. And Gabriel, can we, since we are on the panel now, can we count on the creative minds in the content production from theater to movies and maybe space operas to be with us in organizing this industry into an ecosystem?
Yes, I'm sure we can. There are already many associations trying to group creative people from different sectors. Yes, of course, they will be very supportive. And I think, as Danny said, there's call for optimism. Of course, we will always be facing the politics and governance and all these issues. But in the meantime, we need to find the solutions ourselves. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Eli, do you have a project for us that we can jump into and put it on our action plan tomorrow?
I have decided about a year or two ago that while doing everything else, my most important project, and I think it should be our most important project here in the room, is to first thank people like USAID for finding ways to help us. Thank executive for taking the initiative, but definitely I would have one project in mind: put down the guys in power.
But
there's nothing else you should be doing.
But peacefully, I hope we cannot call...
peacefully but mean.
You are defining journalism, peacefully but mean. Okay.
No, really, I meant to say that our industry, whether it's content, whether it's communications, journalism, we should be the ones at the forefront of the fight. We should be the ones that actually tell others what to do about the fight. And we should be the ones that are leading the way forward and bringing these goons down.
You are talking about us taking up the role, the responsibility, and the gauntlet of being really a fourth estate, which unfortunately I have not really seen Lebanese journalism do very well, but my perception of that is very limited by my interaction with Lebanese side, media sites. So Aliyah, you are much better positioned.
And we will practically support you doing so. And I would want to emphasize on that point again.
Yes.
If you want to hold them accountable through journalism, come and talk to us.
And Aliyah, tell us, is our future as the fourth estate and the journalistic side possible? And what's your final word?
I would have left the country if I really didn't believe in not only that we're in a good place, we're in a horrible place, but for journalism, this is a fantastic story we're reporting on. We've never had the edge of actually the interest of the public in knowing, and which yes, nothing is happening. We don't have any access to judiciary or anything. None of our institutions work, but we have the public's attention now. We need to scale our production. We produce one investigation per year. It needs to be 100 investigations. That's definitely a problem. If you ask me about one final thought, I think the word ecosystem was repeatedly used today, the word fund and the word strategy. If you ask me, I'd say we need a strategy because we're really functioning in a vacuum. There's no state, there's a failed state, and we're literally doing the job of the state. So this could also be an opportunity. money alone will not solve the problem. Money with a strategy, a lot of what has been said by Mike or by Danny, making sure that it's absolutely true. We have the human capital. We need to make sure that our youth, that we are actually, those who are getting a good education are leaving the country. So, and also like having this overall strategy to educate properly and to keep them in the country, create an ecosystem where they can function. So, but it's, I think with some strategizing, it's doable.
Thank you. Now, I promised you to finish within maximum 10 minutes time overrun, and we are now at 1:05. So, Borhan, do you have a final word for us from your observer post and senior advisory post on the panel?
Thank you very much. Look, obviously, all what has been said by all the professionals around the table and online gives a lot of hope that this industry, this sector, can only grow and has a lot of potentials of growing. And our hope is that the outcome of our discussions, your discussions, and the report that's going to be generated by it will be used in properly in supporting the industry with obviously the support of USAID, and that will allow mainly the growth that you are all eager to see and to live, and the employment of the young people that has been mentioned several times today, that as one of the participants said, they are coming back, which is a great news, and they're probably given opportunities of not leaving. I think this is the main item that we at LED are very much eager to see that this is happening. We want our youth and then professionals to stay and to continue being a part of this economy. Thank you very much. We really enjoyed your discussions. I will look forward to the conclusions of this debate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And just on a side note again, yes, this morning I was on a phone call with a friend in Dubai who observed the proceedings yesterday, and she told me, Thomas, you look 15 years younger on this web watching you yesterday than you did a year ago. I am not sure, I cannot judge that myself, but my feeling is that it's not only the young talent, but we also, all of us who are a little grayish somehow, Yasser, are getting, or Eli, or Danny, or Gabrielle, even our most eligible gentleman here, Mark, always a spatter of gray somewhere, but we are getting younger by our interaction, it seems. So you are smiling broadly, you are going to be rejuvenated. It's a fountain of youth, we have discovered it. Yasser, do you have hopes that our funding and strategizing will be able to come through?
I believe that commitment to quality always pays off. And I also believe in the forces of the market. What we also know about our space is that we're not as disappointed as the primary, secondary, and tertiary industries who depended on public policy or public initiative. Thank God we have been totally neglected for the last 70 years in that regard. Which also allows us to have more freedom of movement, to get organized. It's most probably the industry where we can see much more cooperation between the different stakeholders, and the stakeholders are getting closer together. Who would have ever thought that I would need Gabriel, for example, 10 years ago or 15 years ago? In the last 2-3 years, the frequency of us reaching out to Gabriel and seeking his advice and his expertise and his talent in producing content for executive I see it increasing. Our reaching out to Danny, and basically I blame Danny, and I will never forget how Danny got me to get involved in executive 21 years ago. He is the reason why I got in. It was a lunch نسيت وين داني كنا مغديين بسوفيل كان في مطعم تحت. And he basically encouraged me to get involved in journalism. And Impact BBDO, where I never thought I would reach out to Impact BBDO through the years. And for many years, they used to develop our covers creatively and execute them. So the synergies are there. The talent is there. The market is there. There is $110 trillion that are looking to be invested yearly around the world. And a lot of it goes to frontier and emerging markets. We are a frontier and emerging market with all the risks that we carry. How do we come together to become attractive so that we can receive part of these investments? There's a lot of work for us to get noticed, but we have to keep the hope high. So thank you so much. Again, the outcomes, as I described, we're going to have two outcomes. A series of articles that will be published in Executive that will delve with more detail into our discussions, but also the compilation of a plan of action where basically your ideas will be present. And for this also, we're going to maybe most probably reach out to you to discuss further the feasibility and the possibility of moving work further from it. We will take you on your offer, and we will be knocking on your doors. So thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Gabi. Thank you, Danny, for being with us, and thank you for your support.
And again, thank you, everyone. Journalism is the one thing that is decisively in need of constant reinventing itself, and I'm sure we can do a good job in it because we have the pressure. We can do perhaps even a better job than some news organizations in the first world, the so-called. Anyway, without talking more, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a safe journey, and communicating we will be again. Thank you so much.